Hello. We have daffodils. Um, this week we're going to talk about lifespan development. It's chapter 9 in your free book. A lot of these slides I'm going to move through rather quickly and refer you to the reading in the free book in chapter 9. Please do that. Also, please do the study guide before taking the exam. The other thing, this is one unit that I'm really asking you to watch the videos. And I've listed at least 4 or 5. They're the ones that start with M&M, and they're very brief. Conservation task, parenting styles. I really, if you want to understand, especially some of the cognitive development of kids, you'll want to watch these videos. It illustrates it better than I can describe, or even better than the reading provides. You have to see it to understand it. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start with just an overview. I'm trying to keep each of these videos to about 15 minutes, and I'm trying to do 2 a week. So I'm going to go quickly. And I'm referring you to things that I want you to pay attention to in your reading. Overall, we have 3 different areas of the lifespan I'll focus on. We have infancy and childhood, then we have adolescence, and then we have adulthood. We'll probably spend the least amount of time on adulthood, the most time on infancy and childhood. Within those 3 realms, we'll be talking about physical development, cognitive development. Cognitive development is how we think about the world, how we problem solve, how we connect the dots, how we understand things. So cognitive development is our thinking processes. And then social development is how we connect with others and form relationships. Okay, so prenatal development, these are just some of the different stages. If you've probably heard of these if you've had a basic biology class, starting with the germinal stage with a fertilized egg until it implants. And then during that time we call it the zygote. The embryo stage, 3 to 8. And then in the month 3, we start referring to the developing baby as a fetus. So we have conception, begins with sperm penetrating the egg. Obviously, the zygote is the developing organism for the next 2 weeks. And you can see what this looks like as time moves along into 9 weeks. And then this is interesting, just about kind of what starts to develop at what week. So you have hearing begin at about 20 weeks, lungs develop, brain starts to grow rapidly. And that's an important piece too, because a week 28, when the brain's starting to really develop it, it's critical to make sure the uterine environment, the environment of the uterus, is a healthy one. This leads me to this topic here, fetal alcohol syndrome. Mothers who drink during pregnancy that can lead to serious problems in the developing fetus. What you see here on the pictures on the right is that kids whose mom drank when they were pregnant have flatter faces, wide set eyes, but they also have a number of problems with the brain development. On the right here, you see the baby of the brain with fetal alcohol syndrome and the normal brain here to the left. Basically, what happens when a mom drinks during pregnancy is that if you've ever heard of stem cells, those are undifferentiated cells. When they're migrating to form the hippocampus and the hypothalamus and the amygdala, if there's teratogens, and those are toxins or environmental toxicity chemicals basically that influence brain development, those stem cells don't go where they're supposed to go, and you have basically a hardware system that isn't adequate for the eventual child and then adolescent and adult to deal with the real world. So that's just some warnings there, obviously. Some newborn competencies, you have those just basic reflexes that we're all born with, the ability to suck and cry and looking towards faces. Also, when we're infants, the infants are categorized into 2 categories in terms of personality. One's kind of the easy style, the relaxed, uninhibited style, and then the anxious, sometimes they call these colicky babies. Now, these are inborn tendencies to have a personality develop throughout life, but a child is not stuck on one of these 2. Obviously, there's more than 2 personality styles for the rest of their life, because social attachment and relationships go on to influence personality development a lot in life. This is one topic I want to talk a fair amount about, and that is how the brain develops. This is a famous study done with rats. Some rats were, all these rats are genetically similar. Some were raised in isolation, like you see over here, just in a simple cage with nothing but water and food. Then other rats were put in environments that actually had toys and had lots of other rats, actually had more than even what they show here, have little tubes and stuff they can crawl around in, and had stimulating environments. What they found after 6 weeks, when they had these rats living in these environments, they killed them all. That's what they do with a lot of rat studies, and then looked at their brains. What you see here on the left is what happened to the neurons of the rats who were in an environment that was not very stimulating, that was boring, that didn't have enough stimulation. Over here on the right, you see the rats who were in social stimulation and had toys and things. They have like much more dendrites and a lot more axon terminals than the other rats had. This is true for humans too. I mean, basically, you can guess what you need to do with a toddler or an infant based on studies like this. The more stimulation you provide, the more their neurons develop, the more dendrites they're going to have, and that's going to prepare them later on in life to be able to deal with a complex world. So actually, there have been studies done where researchers have asked families, can we put microphones in your house? And the people agreed. And what they found was basically is the more words spoken in the house per day on average, and that's all the computer programs did, counted the number of words spoken, and they could differentiate TV and internet, things like that, from the human voice. The more words spoken to a child, the better off they were in terms of their intelligence later on in life. So, and probably one of the big things you can do there is, if you have a child, is the way to get that kind of more verbal interaction is to ask questions. What they found was that the parents who did the best with stimulating their children were asking questions. Like if they took them to the grocery store, they'd say like, they'd pick up an apple, like, what color is that? And like the kid would say red, and it's like, what else is red? And the kid would start to list things. Sorry, that's my phone. And just the more everyday interaction. So like, what color is this shirt? What color are my glasses? New glasses. And it's not just colors, but anything. And also, you want to take kids outside. It doesn't have to be anything complex, but just having new stimulation, new environments for the kids will help them with their brain development, and their neurons grow richer, thicker dendrites, and they're capable later on in life to perform intellectually, cognitively. All right, these are some basic stages of motor development. I just threw this up there because some people don't know. They're general guidelines. Some kids are a little bit earlier than this, some kids are a little bit later, so there are windows when this happens. If you have a child that doesn't begin crawling until like 10 or 12 months, that should not be a big worry. If it's 2 years, yeah, you might want to have your child checked out. This is probably what I'm going to spend the rest of our today time on, and that is the cognitive development of children. I only have like 2, I think, more slides, but this is where we spend the most of our time. A long time ago, it was thought that children had the same intellectual development as adults. I mean, or had the same intellectual capacity, but that they were just little adults. That's stupid, but obviously they didn't. But this Jean Piaget is a French guy, is into education, started studying kids closely, trying to figure out how do they see the world differently. When it comes to that, actually, he was able to come up with certain tasks that the kids were able to do, and basically demonstrate, here are ways of characterizing these different stages of cognitive development. And this is where I really need you to watch the video. So you can see here, from birth to nearly 2 years of age, it's called the sensory motor, because that has senses and motor development. So a little baby is just taking in the whole world through, you're thrust into this world, and stimulation is coming in. I mean, all the wiring in the neurons is trying to connect up. Like, what is that light? What is that image? What is that face? What is that? A familiar face? Is that a different face? What is this? And you know how kids experience the world? They just grab it and put it in their mouth. That's how they experience the world. It's like grab things, motor, sensory, touch, taste, feel, smell. That's starting to wire up all the stuff in the brain. That's a critical time. I know I had a friend of mine who had a child. And he said the first time, this is his first job, they put the child in the high seat, or what do you ever call that, the high chair, and put a bunch of Cheerios in front of the little kid, and he just like smashed it, and they went all over the floor. By the end of this stage, They could put 3 Cheerios in front of their child, and the little boy would just go, I'll eat it. And he had a lot more control of his motor development and his senses. So that's what happens during the sensory motor stage. Also during sensory motor stage, please watch the video on object permanence. Human being children are dumber than dogs. Dogs, if you take their bone and they want it and you put it behind your back, they'll go behind your back. Kids, if you take their pacifier that they really want and put it behind your back, out of sight, out of mind. They don't have an idea that that object is permanent. As soon as it's gone from their sight, it doesn't exist. That's what object permanence is about. From age 2 to about 6 or 7 is what Piaget called the pre-operational stage. During this stage, this is, they call it pre-operation, and this is weird because what Piaget meant, it's part of the French language, is they could not operate in the world with logical thought. So they weren't using logical operations to make sense of the world. It was a lot more just like gut feeling. And it's really characterized by a couple different things here. One big piece is called egocentrism, and also what they call the theory of mind. Is during this stage, the kids begin to get the sense that like, oh, what I know, you don't know. I mean, early in this stage, the pre-operational stage, children will literally think, if I know it, you know it. And if you know it, I know it. There's no differentiation. So you could be sitting there watching TV and a 4-year-old will come up and stand right in front of the TV thinking because they can see it, you can see it too. If you watch the M&M video, you're going to see a little boy being given a package. This is mean. Given a package of M&Ms. He's like, oh yay, M&Ms. And he's like, oh, there's M&Ms in here. And he opens it up and there's pencils in there, which is a bummer. I'd be really ticked off. But then they asked the little kid, they said, okay, we're gonna seal it back up. Your dad's been in another room. He hasn't seen any of this. What's he gonna think's in this bag? He's like, oh, pencils. It's like, how the hell is his dad gonna know if his dad hasn't even seen that? He's gonna think there's M&Ms there. The kid doesn't have a theory of mind that his dad has seen anything different from what he sees. That's what that's about. So also, it's strange, but this also means that when kids can start to lie, that's a good sign cognitively. If you have a brother or sister and like you're young and you're playing, you know, you're 4 or 5 years old, and you break something, and you realize, oh, mom doesn't know that I broke it, I can blame it on my sister. That means that child has developed a theory in mind that their mom doesn't know what they know. And that's a good sign. It's weird that, you know, lying, it allows for teasing, it allows for jokes, it allows for all sorts of things. But I mean, this theory of mind, realizing you know the things that other people don't know, is majorly significant. Another piece of this in this pre-operational stage is that egocentrism it's related. And that is that, again, I see the world, you see the world the way I do. Please watch the video. I think it's just called egocentrism. And they asked this little young kid, and they're sitting around this kind of play set. And one person sitting on one side of the table, and one person sitting on the other side. And there's this big volcano in the middle that divides the whole thing. And the teacher asked the kid, what do you see? And he describes it all. And she goes, now tell me what I see. She can't see anything that he sees because it's on the other side of the volcano. But he says, you can see this and this and this. Everything's right in front of me. That's egocentric. That means it's centered around me. Everything's about me. Sometimes people don't develop far from this. So egocentrism is the world revolves around me. Me-centric. Ego is me, centered, centric. Okay, then the other 2 stages in Piaget's cognitive development are not that elaborate. Concrete operations means that you can operate in the world logically. Do you remember the law of conservation of matter or energy? That matter can neither be created nor destroyed, it just changes forms. That's logical. And that's what is meant by conservation. You can read about it, but please watch the video called Conservation Task that's in this module. It will help you understand a child who does not grasp conservation and a child who does. It can only really be illustrated. Finally, the last stage of cognitive development is for in basically age 12 on. Piaget just called it formal operations. That means you can think abstractly and complexly. Other psychologists since Piaget's time have divided that last stage into 7 additional stages, because obviously there are levels of complex and sophisticated thinking as an adult develops. I mean, going from seeing things as just yes or no, as being true or not true, dichotomous, to thinking there are some things that we can't know, to thinking there are some ways we can know things better. I'm not going to test you on that, but just know that Piaget didn't do a very good job describing the most advanced stage of cognitive development called formal operations. But other psychologists have taken that on. That's all I have for you for today. I hope you're doing well, and I will come up with another video sometime soon. Take care.